Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for coming back. This is CK Time. I'm CK, of course. And if you remember, that Halloween episode had a special guest with me as well. His name, of course, is Vinh. And guess what? He's back here with me today. And something special. This is going to be a little bit of a gaming episode for all you gamers out there. I thought it would be a cool idea since, when probably last year or sometime last year, there was a new game coming out of Nintendo that really sparked my interest, and it was called...
Your interest.
My interest, I know. Yeah, Metroid Dread. I don't know if you guys have played it before or heard of it. It came out sometime last year. Do you remember exactly, if you recall?
Yeah, it was late last year. I think November? I don't know. My sense of time lately has just been kind of a mess.
It just feels like every day is the same here. Metroid Dread is a game that it came out for Nintendo last year sometime in the fall. For the Switch, I think currently, just for the Switch, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
like any flagship Nintendo franchise, Nintendo only.
Yeah, it's a Nintendo exclusive. And then Metroid, so I was telling myself, you know what? Metroid's been around for quite some time, and I feel like a lot of people are, more intrigued now about what is Metroid or what's that franchise game is like, because some of you guys seen it from Super Smash Brothers series. Today I was thinking about maybe we should go over and look back and see what the history of Metroid, seeing all the games and what makes Metroid, and who better to know more than my friend here Vinh, who played a lot of these games.
Yeah, you could say I'm something of a fan. Maybe not like a super fan of the series, but I'm knowledgeable on the subject.
Yeah. And you can see here that he brought some of his games here just to showcase to see what it looks like. Some of the games that throughout the Metroid franchise. And for the beginning, I guess the first question we could all think of, what is the story of Metroid? Or what is, essentially is Metroid?
Well, to put it simply, the story of Metroid is just about the bounty hunter Samus Aran going on various missions to stop the evil space pirates from taking over the galaxy. Plans usually involve trying to use the titular Metroids as bioweapons.
And the Metroids, are they a species, or what kind of creatures are they?
Well, they're these big floating fanged jellyfish that suck the life force out of people, vampire-like. They were originally created by Samus's foster parents. We can get into that a bit later, as a bioweapon to destroy the parasitic X.
The story of Metroid, with Samus, her job is to basically exterminate them, in a sense, sounds like.
Yeah, and in fact she did do exactly that in Metroid 2.
And then in the story, with Samus, I guess you were talking about her parents and something like that. What could you say about her, upbringing?
Yeah, so when Samus was a child, around 2 or 3, her colony was attacked by space pirates, and she was the lone survivor of the attack.
Wow. And then, so it sounds like she's definitely one of those protagonists where it's the lone ranger type who does, basically serve the galaxy, and
Samus does work pretty much on her own, almost exclusively.
Sounds like the Mandalorian, right? But totally different. But I guess you could say speaking of her story, Samus's lore, I guess you could say, what special abilities does she have as a bounty hunter?
Well, a lot of her abilities come from her suit, which was given to her by the ancient Chozo people. I should probably mention that after the attack of her colony by the space pirates, she was taken in by a tribe of Chozo and raised on their home planet of Zebes.
Yeah, and these race, it sounds like they're very benevolent creatures.
Yeah,
and
they're basically these bird people with kind of a shamanistic vibe to them.
Wow. Yeah, they're pretty cool, the Mystics. It reminds me of, those big birds. I guess totally the better side of the birds from Dark Crystal. That's what I always think of.
I can see that.
Yeah, those big puppeteer creatures, but not evil in a sense, those creepy looking ones.
Yeah, the Chozo are very much not evil. From what I understand. Like, I'm not super deep into the lore, but from what I've read of the lore, the Chozo that raised Samus actually genetically modified themselves to feel physical pain whenever they would bring harm on other people.
Wow. These Chozo are like something that you don't see like in the initial games, I'm guessing. Like it builds on through the lore. I'm guessing there's like some kind of like book or series that details the story of Samus more than the
Yeah,
games.
it's probably worth mentioning that a lot of this background isn't even present in the games themselves. A lot of the lore was actually in a manga series that debuted, I think, in the early 2000s.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, for those of you, if you have time, you should definitely read up on that, because I think it'll make you appreciate the game more. Is there any like recurring characters besides Samus that shows up in the story?
Well, the biggest one has to be Ridley.
Oh,
He was the leader of the Space Pirates. Well, still is, actually. And he was the one who personally killed Samus's parents.
oh. I guess Ridley, that rings a bell because like I've seen him in like the Super Smash Bros. Characters.
Yep, there's a long-running meme that he was too big to be in Smash.
I mean, yeah, like look at the size of that pterodactyl like dinosaur thing, but
Yeah, it's funny. In order to make him work in Smash, they had to shrink him down to the size he was in the original NES Metroid, where he was slightly taller than Samus.
it's good to know. I mean, honestly, like he's a character that I think a lot of fans like, and I'm just surprised how long, because how many, he's been around for since you would say like the beginning of Metroid or like towards.
He was one of the bosses in the original, and he's appeared in pretty much all of the games. It's actually less often that he doesn't show up,
Yeah.
despite the fact that he dies in every single game, but somehow Ridley came back.
He's immortal, I guess. But yeah, so Ridley is one of those recurring characters. I would say probably the most arch rival of Samus, probably, and the Metroid itself. I guess now we're looking at back into like the older games. What would you say would be like? Just like, would you describe the style of the games?
So, as you can probably guess from the name, Metroid is one of the progenitors of the Metroidvania genre.
Oh,
Although, fun fact, that term apparently comes from the Castlevania fandom. It was apparently coined to describe the Castlevania games from Symphony of the Night onwards, because they took on a more Metroid-like format.
yeah, I could see the semblance of Metroid and Castlevania. Very like the side-scrolling kind of game where you do have like those different arenas or stages.
Well, it goes beyond that, though. The thing that makes a Metroidvania is picking up abilities as you progress, which then allow you to access new areas of the map that you couldn't get to before, to get more abilities that you can use to explore the map further.
It's like instead of gaining levels, you're just gaining abilities and power.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty clever way of designing.
Yeah, you can almost describe it as an early prototype of the open world genre.
I think also it's just how like the map is so huge, or it's complex in its own way, where you basically had to run back and forth.
Yep, backtracking is a staple of the franchise, for better or worse.
Yeah, because I mean, for some people, they like to go forward. It's very linear. With this one, you're forced to go back to get something that's there, and now it's unlocked.
Yeah. For me, part of the fun of Metroid games is finding a new item and then just thinking back of all the places that you couldn't get to before and realizing, oh, I can get to this area now.
That's a really smart idea to make the game not as huge world, but at the same time, it's like reusing some of the maps, like for more exploration.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty clever. So now we look into like the gameplay mechanics of the Metroid. Has Metroid changed their formula?
Yeah, it's probably worth mentioning there's basically two types of Metroid games nowadays. You have the classic side-scrollers, as you mentioned, and then there's Metroid Prime, which made the shift to a first-person perspective.
Definitely feels more like an RPG kind of thing. Or
more like a first-person shooter. A lot of people like to equate it to Halo, but I feel like that's kind of missing the point. Like, it may look like Halo at a glance, but it's still very much Metroid in structure.
yeah, that first person shooter, I mean, definitely it takes to a new element to the game, besides just always that 2D scrolling or 3D scrolling. But
Yeah. My favorite game in the series, I'd have to say it's a toss-up between Metroid Prime and Super Metroid.
interesting. Well, what's something about those that you were like super intrigued or like super like impressed by?
Yeah. Well, start with Super. I think the thing that impressed me most about Super is just the fact that it came out in 1994, yet it still holds up so well today.
Yeah, it's
Like,
pretty.
it does start to show its age nowadays, but it's not like, say, going back to the original NES Metroid, where it's like that's basically unplayable by today's standards.
Yeah, I mean, even emulation, like that game just doesn't look great nowadays, I'm guessing.
Super Metroid just drops into the world and just gives you a very vague objective of kill the 4 bosses, go fight Mother Brain,
Wow.
and then you're just on your own from there.
Would you say it's like similar to those games that don't? They're not holding. It's not like a game where it holds your hand, right? It's kind of like
Yeah.
you just jump in and do it. Like you just start the story. Would you say like Metroid target like difficulty would be like if somebody was playing it? Like what would you say was the hardest Metroid game that you would say?
Well, I'd have to give hardest to either Samus Returns or Metroid Dread, both of which we got right here.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 most recent games, and I think the developers tried to focus more on making Samus more agile as opposed to slow and tanky like she used to be in the older games.
Yeah.
It's more of a focus on avoiding attacks rather than just taking them.
True. I think that's like the thing that people are concerned with nowadays. Some games they're just sometimes they're intimidated by the difficulty level or the amount of learning curve that it takes for a game.
Yeah, that's certainly happened with Dread.
Yeah.
Like, basically the same arguments you see with Dark Souls. Should the game have an easy mode? So if you're having trouble, there's nothing stopping you from just backing off from the boss and picking up some items to better prepare yourself.
That's nice, definitely, because like you just want to be you want to like keep track of the amount of stuff you have, but at the same time not feel like it's impossible. It's just that you just have to be more, I guess, adventurous in a sense.
Yeah, and that's very much the name of Metroid, exploring.
It's a wonderful type. I think that's fun.
It's worth mentioning that throughout the series they've tried to implement either features or just straight up design the game in ways to help guide the player through with mixed success.
Yeah.
Going back to Super Metroid, like Super Metroid gives you like basically no guidance.
Wow. Yeah, I mean that could be hard for some people who are not, they're not veterans of Metroid or they don't understand how Metroid works.
So then in contrast, you have games like Other M, where I think they went way too far in the other direction,
Oh yeah.
where there is no exploration in that game.
Oh dear. I guess that's definitely good to know because for some people it definitely changes the way they play. Also, just how the experience of the game is.
The point of Other M was, to be fair, story, but I'm not sure they pulled that off either.
Probably not one of your top 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's look into possibly even ranking these games and see which ones you would probably do.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. Let's see. What's the first game? Would you say?
Well, you could probably guess from me talking about it earlier, but top tier would be Super Metroid, followed very closely by Metroid Prime, which is basically just Super Metroid in first person.
Oh, I see. Like, what's the next game?
Maybe it's just because it's the most recent one I've played, but I'd have to give the next spot to Metroid Dread.
Yeah.
Like, it just feels good to play, and it's got this good balance of letting you explore on your own while still kind of softly guiding you in the right direction.
Yeah, I think that's true because like Metroid Dread, I mean the quality has gone up. You can tell just by game trailer or footage.
The internet would like to disagree with you. They
Yeah.
like to say it looks like a mobile phone game,
Ooh.
which I disagree. That's severely underselling it.
Yeah, I guess you could say on a glance. I mean, mobile app games have gone up in quality too. It's like it might look like a mobile game just based on the trailers, probably, but I would say it all depends on the story, and I think it depends how much content in a game kind of distinguish. Because I feel like mobile app games, like it's kind of like a formula, and they just kind of rinse and repeat,
Yeah.
and they recycle, reskin characters to make them look exactly the same. But I think the difference is just the quality, like in the story and the content, like the game platform.
I will say, Metroid Dread is a fairly short game. Like, my first playthrough was maybe 10 hours, and after a couple playthroughs, I can pretty consistently do it in just over 3. But
Wow.
that's another thing I like about Metroid. They're replayable. Yeah, it's just this nice, quick game that you can play over a couple sessions when you got nothing better to do.
That's true. I think that's the cool thing about Metroid. It's like you have your pacing. You can go as fast as you want. They allow you to go and play on a quicker speed run, but also you could take time to enjoy the like the design, the game, like platforms, like the levels. And I think with Metroid is like they know there's a community. I've heard of the community where they try to see how fast you can complete Metroid.
Yeah, I do believe Metroid is one of the franchises that basically started speedrunning. All the way back in the first Metroid on the NES, there were actually rewards for beating the game in under a certain amount of time.
And then after Metroid Dread, what would you say the next game would be?
Well, I have to give the next spot to, let's say, Metroid Prime 3. That I feel deserves special mention because that was actually the first Metroid game I ever played.
Oh, really?
To be honest, I'd probably rank it lower if it wasn't my first. Like, it's one of those games that goes more towards the linear side of things.
Oh, I see.
Dark Samus was actually introduced at the ending of Metroid Prime, where if you collected all the items in the game before finishing it, you get a special cutscene after the credits showing a puddle of Phazon, and this creepy hand would pop up out of it.
Oh, man, yeah. Dark Samus is a cool looking character. What would you say after Prime 3 would be the next one?
I'd have to go with Prime 2 after that one.
Wow. What makes Prime 2 better? Or, I mean, what makes
mean
Prime
worse
than Prime 3?
Yeah. Be honest, I'd probably rank it just as high as the first Metroid Prime, but it has one glaring issue that just really holds it back for me. Beam ammo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so in Metroid Prime 1, Samus had 4 different beam weapons. You have your standard power beam you start the game with, and the electric wave beam, the icy ice beam, and the plasma beam.
I see.
Yeah. So Prime 2 has this whole gimmick of there being a light and a dark world, and you have beam weapons that correspond to that. You have a light beam effective against dark enemies, and a dark beam effective against light enemies. But they went and gave them limited ammo, so you can't really use them all the time.
Yeah, I feel
Enemies do drop ammunition, but for some reason they decided to make it so that you can only get ammo if you kill an enemy with the opposite beam.
I see. Yeah, I mean, that's just as annoying. It's like...
Yeah, so I just end up playing through the game with the basic power beam, which is kind of just a pea shooter by the end of the game.
Yeah, that's... Well, I mean, they're just trying to explore a concept which didn't really work out mechanically. It just seems kind of, like, useless.
Yeah. I mean, if they just made beam ammo drop normally, like missiles do, it probably wouldn't have been an issue. But tying it to the opposite beam weapons is what kills it. Because how do you get more dark beam ammo if the enemies that you need to kill in order to get it are resistant to the dark beam?
True. Yeah, maybe there's just something to learn from, like, from the Metroid series.
Yeah, they never did do that again with beams, so...
Hey, maybe they learn. But I guess now we know that's what, it's probably the downfall of that game. And then after that, I guess now we're looking at from the good level down to more of a mid-tier now, I would say.
Yeah. I'd say at the top of the mid-tier would be Metroid Fusion for me.
Metroid Fusion.
Yeah, Fusion was the first game in the series where they actually tried to focus more on a story, and I think it's the one they actually did the best with.
Oh, really?
Yeah, despite me ranking it lower.
Oh. Yeah, I heard of Metroid Fusion. I think it's a popular title, I would say, like of the series, but I guess for that, I mean, it's not terrible. At least it's in the upper mid tier.
Yeah. So
yeah.
the whole thing with Fusion was kind of like with Dark Samus Metroid Prime. Samus has a evil clone of herself again. Go figure.
Wow.
This time, however, it's one of the X parasites that's mimicking her.
Oh, okay.
If you recall from earlier, I mentioned Metroids were created to fight the X.
Yeah.
So the Metroids are basically extinct at this point, and now the X are back.
Mm-hmm.
They're these gelatinous blobs, sometimes known in the fandom as the Forbidden Gummy Bears.
Ooh. that's a cool name for them.
Yeah. So they infect other organisms and copy their DNA to become basically more lethal clones of said creatures.
Interesting.
So Samus gets infected by one of these at the beginning of the game, and parts of her suit need to be cut off to save her. And those parts eventually become the Samus Aran X, or the SAX. Probably the most significant departure in Samus's appearances.
Oh.
Up to this point, Samus has kind of had a pretty standardized appearance of, the red and orange suit with giant round shoulders.
Yeah.
But in Fusion, those iconic shoulder pads are gone. They've been cut away.
Wow.
And now she's just left with pretty much the undersuit.
Yeah, I always liked her design suit because the bulbous pauldrons are very unique and iconic to her suit.
Yeah.
Just because, she can curl up into a ball, kind of, in a sense.
Funny you mention that because they weren't actually originally part of Samus's design.
No?
No. The original design for her in the NES Metroid didn't have those gigantic shoulder pads, just more reasonably sized ones.
Yeah.
The reason they exist is because of Metroid 2 on the Game Boy.
More you know.
Because it was a black and white screen, they couldn't really differentiate the different suit upgrades through color alone.
Oh.
So they added some extra armor to emphasize that, hey, you upgraded your suit.
That happens a lot with these games, or designs. You can't tell the difference, so they have to do something to make it look even more drastic, even if it's goofy. But I think it turned out great because that's a really cool, smart design. I think later on, just because it makes her look more. I guess also it builds that look like the strength as well. Just because if you have an upper body,
there's a bit of a dichotomy with that in Fusion, actually.
Yeah.
The SAX is Samus at full strength from the end of Super Metroid, whereas Samus in her new Fusion suit has none of her abilities. So she's basically helpless against the SAX. You have no choice but to run from it.
Really? What would you say the next step down will look like?
Yeah, so after Metroid Fusion, I'd have to go with Samus Returns here.
Oh. Yeah, what would you say, with Samus Returns, that you didn't like?
Well, I guess we should start by explaining. Samus Returns is actually a remake of Metroid 2 Return of Samus on the Game Boy.
Oh, okay. So it's just a remake, but it was you would say not as good as the original?
Well, again, the original is a Game Boy game, so it's kind of hard not to improve on that.
True, graphic-wise.
Yeah, but there are 2, maybe 3 major issues that kind of hold it back for me.
Oh.
One of the biggest ones is just the fact that it's a remake of Metroid 2, and a pretty faithful one at that.
Yeah.
Given the fact that it was on a portable handheld system, Metroid 2 was fairly linear in its design.
That makes sense. But yeah, I would say definitely they're trying to make it more, probably not a serious title, but just to give the fans something, for a remake.
Well, it was also the first Metroid game in about 8 years after Other Realms, so
no, they gotta do something.
Definitely want to put effort into it.
True. And then I guess after that, have we reached to the bottom at this point, to the mid tier?
Yeah, we're starting to get the lower tiers here.
Yeah.
So after Samus Returns, I'd say rank the original Metroid 2 is the next best.
After that, I'm guessing we have reached lower tier at this point.
Yeah, so at this point we're scraping the bottom of the barrel here.
Oh dear.
This might be kind of a hot take, but
Ooh.
I'm gonna rank the next lowest game as Other M.
Oh.
A very contentious game in the franchise.
Oh man, this game here? Oh
Yep.
wow. Metroid Other M. Yeah, I mean it's the Wii. This is where what was the major issue would you say for this game?
They focused way too hard on the story, and it wasn't even a good story.
Oh god. Yeah. I mean, to the point where it becomes kind of like a what's it called? It's like a novel game, not really like a game anymore.
To an extent, there are some pretty long cutscenes in it.
Oh, it's like the issue with I'm trying to remember which gaming franchises has ton of. I guess you could say like Kingdom Hearts per se. Like Kingdom Hearts 3 is just a cinema movie with a little bit of gameplay. Like you could say
Yeah.
that.
You could say it's kind of like Metal Gear too.
Yeah, you know it's hard to balance that. I think that's the problem. Like people want to balance story, but also you want to make the game be a game. You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that sucks. You know.
You ever heard the argument people sometimes use online where this thing is a good like game, but not a good game within said franchise?
Oh yeah.
I feel like this is the perfect example of a game like that, where, to be honest, it's not completely irredeemable, but it just does not have the hallmarks of what you'd expect from a Metroid game. Like, the gameplay itself is mostly linear, running down hallways, gunning down enemies with little to no exploration. Like, the game goes out of its way to lock doors behind you as you progress.
Wow. Definitely super linear, sounds like. And then after that, I guess like with this game, that's the game that's like way too much story, it's just not enough gameplay.
Yeah, they also changed Samus's character from how a lot of people perceived her beforehand.
Oh yeah.
According to the basically series director Yoshio Sakamoto, apparently the way Samus is portrayed in Other M is how he always intended her to be portrayed.
Oh. Yeah.
But thing is, the way she was presented in other games, she always seemed like this independent,
yeah.
for lack of a better term.
Yeah, like she doesn't seem to have any weaknesses or emotions, and it's kind of like she's just like a very quiet, stoic character where
Yeah, gets the job done.
yeah, like she kind of just like doesn't really mess around or she doesn't struggle internally. Like she's just kind of just there, and yeah.
And then along comes Other M, and suddenly she's emotional, sentimental, and she restricts her use of abilities just because her former commanding officer decided she should do that.
Interesting choice. I wonder if they're just trying to make her more well-rounded, but the problem is like I don't know, they're trying to justify it by nerfing her. Or
To be honest, I understand the point of doing that. It's a staple of starting with no abilities and then unlocking them as they progress. But other games just kind of hand-waved it away and said, no, she just doesn't have abilities. Don't think about it too hard.
Exactly.
Then Other M explicitly goes and says that, no, you got all your abilities, you just aren't allowed to use them.
Wow. Yeah, it's weird because like with Samus, that's the hardest part. It's like, should she have more of a character development, or should she have like more personality, or should she be like, you know, stoic character where it's more about not her, but it's more about the mission. But for some people, I guess they want to see her more human side. But yeah, I think that's what it's the battle between that with the fans. And then after this game, what would you say even lower than this will have fallen?
That would be the original Metroid.
Yeah, probably obvious reasons.
Yeah, so I think my biggest issue with the original Metroid is simply the fact that someone thought it'd be a good idea to make it impossible to shoot half the enemies in the game.
Yeah, that's bad. That's
like, you know how a lot of NES games are tile-based?
Yeah.
Like, they're just specific blocks of terrain. Well, Samus is 2 blocks high and shoots on the second block. A lot of enemies are 1 block high, so her shots just go right over their heads.
Wow.
You can't even jump and shoot down to hit them.
You
can only shoot forward, back, and up.
Wow.
Not down.
I'm just surprised. Like they didn't even test the game. I wonder if it works or not. But that's the interesting thing.
It's also pretty cryptic as far as the games go.
Yeah.
Like usually when there's hidden stuff in Metroid games, there's at least some sort of hint that it's there, like a little crack in the ceiling or a slightly discolored spot in the ground.
Yeah.
But not in Metroid 1.
No.
In order to progress in the game, there's one point where you literally have to jump into fake lava that looks just like real lava, and you'll fall through it.
My God. I hate when games are like that, where they expect you to know their secret. It's like, how could you tell? It's like very hard to even see. Like,
Man, it's always holding
the
Nintendo
puzzle.
Power back then.
Oh yeah, I guess you do have to look at those like magazines or game guides. You have to buy those like those big books, which I don't know if they still make those anymore for certain people. It's like I remember as a kid, everybody has to buy like the gaming like rule book or the whole guide to get the game complete 100%. But yeah, that makes sense. I think that's probably why they expect people to read up on that. What games have we missed here?
Yeah, well, if there are any Metroid fans out there, you'll probably notice that I completely missed Zero Mission. And I know this is sacrilege, but it's because I've never played it.
Oh, really? Is it something that's like it's a huge fan favorite?
It's up there with Super, and it's often cited as one of the best video game remakes of all time,
Wow.
being a remake of the original Metroid.
I'm guessing you'll play it sometime, huh?
If I ever feel like pulling out my Wii U, because that's pretty much the only real way for me to play it at this point as a virtual console game.
Hopefully.
That's actually the reason why I've never played it.
Oh,
Dumb
really?
as it is. I have Metroid Fusion on my 3DS. That's kind of a fun story.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you know how the 3DS wasn't selling back when it came out?
Yeah.
Nintendo dropped the price earlier than intended.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as a reward for people who bought it at full price, they gave out 20 downloadable games on the system. 10 NES games and 10 Game Boy Advance games.
Yeah.
One of which being Metroid Fusion.
Oh, okay.
Thing is, though, where I live, Walmart and Target, not sponsored by the way, dropped the price a day early.
Really?
Yeah. My dad just came home one day and he's like, hey, we should go buy a 3DS. The price dropped and you were saying something about there being a deal.
Wow.
So yeah, we went out immediately, got a 3DS, and I got it at reduced price and got the 20 games with it.
What a steal.
Yeah,
I mean,
so going back to Zero Mission, one of those 10 GBA games was Metroid Fusion, which was the first time I played that game. After playing Fusion, I always kind of wanted to play Zero Mission too, because that was the other GBA Metroid game,
Oh, yeah?
and I kind of wanted to have it on the 3DS,
Yeah.
since that just makes sense. Portable system, portable game.
Yeah. That's where you
But
get-
that never happened.
Oh, really?
It ended up going on the Wii U Virtual Console instead.
Wii U, man. Anybody else out there still have a Wii U? Yeah, that's a tough.
Me.
Yeah, I mean, it's rare. Not many people have those. I don't know. They stopped making them. But so hopefully, I mean, maybe one day they'll port it over to the Switch. I mean, it seems like a lot of these Nintendo games are going to be on the
I mean,
Switch.
there are rumors they'll have a GBA Virtual Console on Switch.
Oh, really? Yeah. I mean, I'm excited because then if more games port over to Switch, I think a lot more people are going to play it since it's more of a universal console now. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of people got Switches, so
Apparently, it's recently outsold the Wii.
yeah, that's surprising because the Wii, yeah, it was super big back then. Like, so many people had them, even businesses had them. It's like the Wii was just something fun to do, and you'll see at your local YMCA have it too.
Yep.
But yeah, it's crazy how like it beat the DS and like the handheld, and now it's like the biggest thing that Nintendo has. And honestly, I feel like every single game that they own is going to be on it anyway. It's probably something that you guys want to look into because you say Zero Mission.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm guessing it would probably fall if we ever rate it maybe a little bit higher in the A series, A tier, S tier probably.
I mean, I hope it's up there considering how much people hype it up.
True. Hopefully the hype is real. But other than that, besides that game, what would you say like other games that you haven't played or?
Well, beyond that, they're mostly just spin-offs.
Yeah.
For example, there is Metroid Prime Pinball in the DS. That's exactly what it sounds like.
Makes sense, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Then there was a multiplayer, surprisingly, focused game called Metroid Prime Hunters, also on the DS.
I mean, you guys ever want to play those? I'm sure they're on the Switch too eventually. But
I kind of doubt if those two.
oh yeah, if they're not big titles, I don't know if Nintendo's going to continue with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
And then, looking more recently, there was another spin-off called Federation Force on 3DS. Again, it was multiplayer. This time, co-op focused. That one got absolutely trashed in reviews, though.
tanked, man.
Yeah, it was the first game in the series after Other M kind of soft killed it.
I see.
And obviously people were not happy that the first game in a while was a spin-off that had nothing to do with Samus or basically the rest of the franchise.
Yeah, that's bizarre. Don't know why, but I mean, they attempted it. Well, at least they know now that it's a waste.
Yeah.
They shouldn't do that.
Had they announced it alongside an actual game, like maybe say Samus Returns, I think it would have been received better.
Yeah, probably. I just think it's just the wrong timing. Or
Yeah, exactly.
marketing. But yeah,
Decent game, just released at the worst possible time.
true. It's just nowadays it's all about timing and what's launching during the same time because competing, like it takes over and like it just competes with the market, the season. But with Nintendo games, I mean, Nintendo is known for a lot of their games to be more popular or more valuable just because of the name brand. And then I guess now, looking at all these games, I was thinking about looking into possibly like people now. Let's say if somebody out here like me or somebody who is not too engrossed in the game like franchise of Metroid or haven't played a lot, what would you say is a really good like immersive game to start, to get into like the style or the game of Metroid?
I feel like this would be a good point to segue into the timeline, since I'm sure a lot of you out there might be a little confused at the timeline of the series.
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair, it is kind of complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically it starts with Metroid 1 or Zero Mission, where Samus is sent on a mission to destroy the leader of the space pirates, Mother Brain, and their home planet of Zebes. Yeah, sounds familiar because that was previously the home planet of Samus's adoptive parents, the Chozo. Yeah, so after Metroid 1 comes Metroid Prime. Side story that's of dubious canon.
Yeah.
Basically, Samus is just out on her own doing her own thing and comes across a distress beacon from a ship floating over a planet.
Oh, yeah.
Turns out it's a space pirate vessel, and something's gone wrong with an experiment they've been working on.
Oh, okay.
Turns out they were experimenting with this mutagenic substance called Phazon, found on the planet they're orbiting above. After that comes Metroid Prime Hunters, surprisingly.
Oh.
Despite it being a spin-off, it does actually play into the main canon of the games.
That's good. I mean, you don't want people to stray off and create another multiverse of the storyline.
No. Yeah, then that's followed by Prime 2 and 3, which continue the whole Phazon story arc.
I know with Metroid, it's like a ongoing missions. Like, there's no really, like, an end goal, would you say?
Well, space pirates are always up to no good, like your classic Saturday morning cartoon villains.
Yeah, that's true. I'm guessing a lot of them have to do with that type of issue with the planets.
So, up next, we go back to the main timeline with Metroid 2, where Samus is sent to the planet SR-388 to exterminate all the Metroids, as the Galactic Federation, their employers basically, have determined that they're just too dangerous to be left in the universe.
And then after Metroid, we were at 2, right?
Yeah.
And then past that.
So basically, at the end of Metroid 2, Samus kills all the Metroids except for one baby Metroid that imprints on her.
Oh, yeah.
Thinks she's its mother.
So
she brings it to this research facility for the Federation to study. And what do you think happens there?
So I'm guessing the space pirates are back.
Yep, you called it. Ridley appears out of nowhere, grabs the baby Metroid, and just flies off with it.
Gotta eat. But yeah, at that point, it looks like Ridley is going to be more in the story now with that.
Yep, so that's how we start off in Super Metroid, the next game in the series, also known as Metroid 3. So, Super Metroid's basically just a retread of Metroid 1. Samus returns to Zebes to steal back the baby Metroid and take down Mother Brain again.
Same.
But bigger and better this time.
Yeah. And then afterwards, what happens to Samus after that?
Well, spoilers for a 27-year-old game at this point.
Mm-hmm.
During the final boss fight with Mother Brain ends up being a lot more powerful than expected, and Samus is on the back foot, nearly dies.
Oh.
And then the baby Metroid swoops in to save her.
As you do.
Yep. It ends up sacrificing herself.
Wow.
But in the process, it supercharges Samus' suit and gives her a much more powerful hyper beam to take down Mother Brain with. So anyways, after Super Metroid, we move on to Metroid Fusion, where Samus is on a exploratory mission with some Federation scientists to basically just study the wildlife of SR-388, now that it's safe with the Metroids being dead.
Oh, yeah.
But, as they're exploring, Samus is suddenly attacked by a mysterious creature that's never been seen before that bonds to her suit.
Oh. And that's why the fusion comes in. Yeah.
Yeah, so, turns out this thing was actually an X-parasite, the prey of the Metroids, which they were designed to combat.
Oh.
As I mentioned earlier, the X-parasites mimic things they infect and becomes a clone of her.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And in order to save Samus from the parasitic infection, the Galactic Federation decides to inject Metroid cells into her, seeing as they're the predators of the X.
Yeah, that makes sense, because, with nature, you take away the predator. I mean, it's like they're going to become the next predator.
Yep. Yeah, it turns out that the Metroid cells have some side effects, making her kind of Metroid-like. She's able to absorb X-parasites, but she also gains the Metroid's vulnerability to cold.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a downfall. But.
Yep. So then the plot of Fusion revolves around fighting the X-parasites in the facility that the surgically removed parts of her suit were sent to for study, because obviously they've spread and infected the entire facility.
Oh, wow. But I'm guessing at that point, she survives, of course. And
obviously, she succeeds in her task and ends up sending the facility on a crash course with SR-388 and completely annihilates the planet, along with all the X-parasites.
And then, it looks like we're getting towards, the end here with Fusion, but.
Yeah. However, I would like to point out that I kind of skipped over Other M here.
Oh, yeah?
For kind of a personal reason.
Oh.
Officially, Other M actually takes place between Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion. Thing with Other M's story, though, is it's basically just a retread of Fusion. All the same things. There's a research facility, Federation's studying things they shouldn't be, and Samus has to go fix the problems.
Interesting. That's why I'm guessing this game wasn't as good, as it was just way too much story.
That was part of it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, because of the way Samus is just suddenly characterized differently than the other games, I personally like to headcanon it as a fever dream that happened while Samus was in a coma after being infected by the X-parasites.
I mean, the game theorists out there, MatPat may know. Who knows? I mean, probably makes sense, honestly. If it's that weird and so unique, I mean, maybe some people could say it's not truly canon, It's probably just some kind of, fan idea. But, yeah, probably that's why it was way too weird of a game. It didn't fit the formula or the story too well. But then after that, we're getting down to probably the most recent story, which will be the Metroid Dread game.
Correct.
Yeah.
Dread is actually a direct continuation from Fusion.
Oh, yeah. And I'm guessing, that game, it's where the story is at now. But would you say, what would you recommend, if somebody who is, like me or someone who kind of knows Metroid but never really got into the story or, the games, too much, what would you say like be a good starter, or which games would be like to get into the story?
Well, to be honest, I feel like Dread is a good starting point. It's available on a modern day console. Should be able to find copies of it fairly easily nowadays, unlike some of the older games.
Yeah, they're hard to find.
Yeah.
And they're probably
And to be honest, the story isn't really a huge deal in the Metroid games. To be honest, the only things you need to know to understand Dread's plot is what happened in Fusion, and the game gives you a recap of that right at the start.
Yeah, I like games where they can give you a little bit of backstory or a little bit of a hint, but not like too many flashbacks. It's basically just a rehash of another game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Metroid Dread. I think for you guys out there who want to get into Metroid, who's curious about the game franchise, just doesn't know, essentially it's a huge library of games that they have. What to start? I think Metroid Dread might be like a good one, just because it's easy to get. As I said, like the Switch, it's available. And a lot of people, I think, nowadays have it. So it's like you don't have to pull out a Wii or Wii U or Game Boy Advance or 3DS.
That said, if it actually does happen, if they do port the Prime Trilogy to the Switch, I'd recommend that as a good starting point, too.
Okay.
It'd probably get people prepared for Metroid Prime 4 as well,
True.
assuming that ever happens.
Yeah, if only Nintendo would try. But we'll see. Hopefully it's not a total lost cause. But yeah, I guess those two games probably would be a good start. I mean, it looks like they're both really good quality games. They're not like, there's not like many issues with it, I would say. Gameplay wise, it's very open world based on what I see. I think all you guys out there who like Metroid, I think you might like that game. Just don't be afraid based on like the difficulty, because I'm guessing like there's like a way to learn. It's not impossible for you guys who want to try out.
Little challenge is good.
Yeah.
You don't want to just steamroll over everything. You want to actually have to learn how to steamroll over things.
It's true. Once you know the game and how it works, you just completely exploit it and you just beat the game that way. I mean, the game wants you to figure out techniques and strategies.
Yeah. If anything, it makes you feel stronger because you know that you won because of your skill, not just because you had enough health to tank every hit that was thrown at you.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the one thing that was I was afraid of, because when I looked at the gameplay and see how the monster fights, it's like it seems so difficult. It looks like it's difficult. It's just because of the game mechanics looks quite it looks really exhilarating experience. But at the same time, I think it's more fun because it shows you could actually do stuff like comboing. You can be creative as well with the abilities that you gain throughout the whole game. It just keeps it more interesting, You don't want to just have the same abilities over and just kind of rinse and repeat. But with this one, I think it's just fun to play with different type of things in the game. But
they did a good job of balancing Samus's abilities in Dread.
Yeah,
they all feel useful in some way.
It definitely just looks nice as well. I think it flows well. Nintendo, usually they make really good quality games. They know how to build a game where it's finished at the same time.
They just have this polish to them that sometimes a lot of AAA games lack these days.
Yeah,
it's kind of an industry standard to just release the game in a functional state and then actually fix all the bugs later.
Yeah, that's why I'm nowadays new game titles people are scared of if it's actually legitimate, completed, or is it going to have a ton of issues right away, or it glitch, or it's going to become unplayable when you want to play it. But I think with Nintendo, you can always expect them to have that quality game where you don't really need all these extra stuff or wait for a patch or something. I think with this game, it's definitely it's ready to go, and it's something you can enjoy without having worrying that it's going to glitch out or be super buggy, because I think just by looking at it, it's a really nice done game by Nintendo. I was surprised when I saw Metroid Dread on just trailers.
Yeah, I would have thought they'd bring back 2D Metroid in this day and age.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays everybody's I think there is some type of audience that just want platform games where it gets complex looking, but at the same time, you don't want to be too, I guess, regurgitating the same formula. You want to try to find new ways to elevate the game style. And I think that Metroid is a game that I think a lot of people should look into if they really like Nintendo type games. I mean, I'm a guy who was all Pokemon. I played a lot of Pokemon in Nintendo, and then I later on played a lot of Mario. But Metroid was something like I wasn't really like was into because of like I haven't seen a lot of people play it. It's kind of a very niche audience, but I feel like now it's becoming more accepted out there. And I think that's why like I want to make this video like with you guys. Like I want to talk about Metroid because I think like it's a game that's underrated. Like it's out there and something like I'm learning and you guys are learning, and you know Vin here is gracious enough to have come over here today and tell me more about it, because you start feeling like it's actually a quality game, or you don't realize just based on like just like reviews and corporate like just like game reviews, IGN, you just want to hear it from somebody who actually plays the game and grew up with it and notice what's a game like, what's it like being like the gamer in the sense like experiencing it. And I'm glad like you brought out some of these game titles and shared us with more about the history and the lore, and as well as just how your experience with the game itself, like the franchise. I'm glad. Like, hopefully, if you guys out there have any questions or about the game or want Vin to like answer, you could always leave in the comments below. Let us know as well what other games franchise you want us to look at or review. Vin here, I mean, he's played a lot of games, and I do too, but not certain games I'm good at. But I would say if you guys want another game analysis or talk about a certain franchise, just let us know, and hopefully we'll see Vin again here on this channel. As always, if you do like this video, leave a like, subscribe, comment as well what games you want to hear next or what other topics and for us to cover. But as always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.